What's going on, everyone? We've got the finals of the Game Matrix Pokemon TCG City Championships, and we've got Ross Cawthon, second place World's 2011 person guy that ran the Truth, but he's running Gothitelle here. The guy on the right is Zane Nelson, pretty well known in the Washington area. He's playing his version of Cake. So Ross gets to start first. He opens Gothita. Zane opens Voltorb, and he goes for Charon. Now Charon is actually a pretty decent play in Ross's particular deck. Normally people would go for the Sage because they want access to more cards, but Ross runs a lot of techs, and he just doesn't want to have to discard anything that he doesn't want to lose out on, especially those techs. Zane really wants to get a Kyurem set up, because if he can set up a Kyurem before Ross can set up a Reuniclus, theoretically Ross is never going to be able to set up a Reuniclus once the Kyurem spreads start, because Kyurem is 30 to everything, Solosis has 30 HP. One of the reasons why I'm personally afraid to run a Trainer Lock deck right now, because of Cake. So Zane goes for the Pont. It appears that his hand was pretty weak. He's got an active Voltorb, so at some point he's probably going to need to get that Electrode out really fast so he can Energy Might. He gets the Kyurem. He drops in a Cleffa. I actually talked to him about this decision. He says he runs a Cleffa because he likes having the free retreater when something dies, and it's also just useful to have Cleffa in any deck, really, because now he can get himself a new hand after getting a Kyurem on board, so he's not too bad off. But if he can get that turn 2 Energy Might off, he's going to be really well off, especially if you can hit at least 2 energies that are water. And also by Energy Mining, he's preventing Ross from using Twins, which is also something to think about. So I believe Ross starts. Keep in mind, Ross takes quite a while to make decisions, so even speeding this up, the game takes quite a while. Not to say he's not, like he's trying to stall or anything, it just takes a long time to make great moves, I guess. He goes straight away for the Rare Candy Gothitelle, which is pretty intimidating. Zane can no longer use his research records or his super rods or anything, really. His deck runs quite a bit of trainers from what I recall. He goes for the Catcher just to kind of, stall a little bit, because now Zane has to find a way to either retreat the Voltorb or somehow get that Electrode set up immediately. And he sets up the Tropical Beach. He actually runs 3 in this deck, if I recall correctly, which is kind of overdoing it, but at the same time it's just a really good card, so it's not too bad. He goes for the Pont, gets a new hand, and he's sitting pretty well. If he can get some basics on the board, and he actually does, he gets a Solosis and a Gothita. So this is Zane's opening. He either needs to set up a turn 2 Glaciate, or he risks Ross setting up the Reuniclus, which is going to be really bad for Zane, especially if he whips out that Superior tech that he runs, because once he gets Superior up and he has Reuniclus, nothing is pretty much dying ever. So he needs to try and set up that Kyurem as soon as possible. He Energy Mites and gets a Fighting and a Steel, which isn't too bad, but unfortunately that means he's not going to be able to Glaciate this turn because none of those energies are on color. So his best move right here is just to put the energy on Cobalion and go for that. He thinks about maybe putting 1 energy on Kyurem, which isn't too bad of a play, but it depends on how soon he wants to start attacking with Cobalion and how important Kyurem is at this point. He can't attack with Kyurem this turn, so once Ross sets up the Reuniclus, like I said, the Kyurem isn't going to be that useful. So just going aggro Cobalion still might be viable for Zane. But right now, I just don't know. Like, looking at Ross's hand, I see a Communication, I see a Sages. It looks like he might be able to set up the Reuniclus, which kind of sucks for him. I believe he goes for Collector here, yeah. And grabs, or either that or Twins, I don't really know. I guess if you grab 3 cards, then it has to be Collector, right? Regardless, I'm not really sure what he'd grab here. He's really just in a tough situation if Ross sets up. It had to have been Twins because he got the energy, I guess. Yeah, I can barely see it. It was a Twins. So he goes for the Iron Breaker, which is pretty strong. However, like I said, if he sets up the Reuniclus, he can just move the damage off. Zane can no longer use trainers, so he's pretty locked down at this point. Ross is going to go for the collector to set up the rest of his stuff. He's probably going to go for what's the first form? Not Scraggy. Snivy. He's going to go for the Snivy. Probably another Gothita. And I think the Doduo, because he runs a 1/1 Dodrio tech in his deck. And by having the Dodrio out, he can switch into another Gothitelle and not get locked by the Iron Breaker, which is pretty smart. So he does grab a Doduo and a Snivy. And then I'm assuming his last Pokemon he's going to grab is a Gothita. That's exactly what he does. So Ross is slowly but surely, or not necessarily slowly, it's actually pretty fast. He's setting up. For some reason the camera zooms in here. Not really sure what's going on there. But he zooms out again, I guess. I guess we can't really see Ross's hand now. So that kind of sucks. But yeah, at this point all Ross really has to do is set up Reuniclus. And I guess he can charge energy onto his active Gothitelle. And if he sets up the Serperior, all the damage that Zane does to his Pokemon is pretty much gone. So he does grab Reuniclus, so I can almost guarantee that he has a rare candy at this point. Otherwise he'd go for the Duosion. And he goes for a candy, gets the Reuniclus, and this is really bad for Zane. Zane lost his opening to potentially prevent him from setting up a Solosis. And he drops down all the other guys, attaches an energy, and I'm assuming he's got a Tropical Beach. After he moves the damage, of course, yeah. I mean, if he didn't move the damage at that point, he'd be giving up a Gothitelle for no reason. Also, he does something pretty smart here. I think he decides to... knock out his own Gothita so that Zane can't use twins. Because Ross has 5 prizes to Zane's 6. And unless he knocks out the one of his Pokemon, Zane's gonna be able to use twins to grab what he needs. So Ross doesn't want that happening. He goes for the Junk Arm to get back a rare candy. I guess he's just preparing for the Serperior, since he's gonna be beaching anyway, and he does that. He kills his Gothita, so now Zane can't use twins. And then he rearranges his damage and goes for the beach. And now Ross is pretty close to set up. If he can get the Serperior out, I just don't see Zane necessarily winning this game. Like, just thinking about what he runs in the deck, Terrakian's gonna do nothing. Cobalion's gonna be a minor issue for Ross. But if he sets up the double Gothitelle and the Dodrio, then he can just switch between them and move the damage, so it's gonna do nothing. And while the damage is being placed on his Pokemon, he gets the Serperior about 6 damage counters between turns, which is crazy. So I just don't know if Zane can win at this point. The point of Cake is to try and, you know, spread really quickly so your opponent can't set up. But if your opponent sets up, then your chances of winning are lowered significantly. And in this situation, I guess, or in that situation, if you can't usually spread, you go for the Cobalion aggro. But Cobalion's got to do nothing here because he has to find a way to one-shot the Gothitelle, or he can just move the damage off, heal it off, and switch into another Gothitelle. So he goes for the Sage's Training. I guess he runs a combination of both. I guess that's fine too. I don't really see the point in running a combination of both. It's either one or the other. But maybe he runs like 4 of one and 2 of another, like he goes all out. I don't know. But he puts down a Gothita, so he's setting up the other Gothitelle. And at this point, he really wants to get that Serperior, because I guess if he doesn't set it up, Zane can theoretically overwhelm Ross with damage to the point where he has to start killing his own guys, or to the point where he can't move around damage anymore, and he has to leave it on the Gothitelle, so Zane can potentially use that opening to kill his Gothitelle. He just moves around the damage. It doesn't look like he has a Serperior yet, so I guess he's just gonna rearrange damage and probably pass his turn. Actually, he can either beach here, or he can just attack into the Cobalion. He appears to have more than 7 cards in hand, so he doesn't beach. But I believe he also doesn't attack either, which I don't really understand. I guess he was too afraid to attack. I'm not really sure why not. Like, Ross runs a really slow deck, so he needs to start, you know, grabbing prizes, because if he doesn't, if the game takes longer than it needs to, then I don't think Ross's deck does very well in sudden death. So neither does Cake either, because they can't energy mine. So he kills another one of his guys, and he goes for the twins again. And at this point, he can grab the Superior and the twin, or the rare candy. I really like that play. You know, being able to use twins here is pretty much going to seal the game for him if he gets the right cards. If he can get the Dodrio in the Superior, then Zane is pretty much lost the game. He gets the Superior out, and Zane just scoops, so we'll move on to game 2, which will be coming up soon.